As far as sequels go, Aliens is pretty damn ballsy. You see, it could have been so easy to simply do a copy-paste, but if you want to make a sequel that's going to stand out, you need to be doing something bolder. You need to be expanding the world and translating characters into new situations. And Aliens did that, but then also changed the genre completely. But in order to understand all the things that Aliens does differently, you need to first look to the original. Alien. Now, Ridley Scott's Alien was absolutely groundbreaking, but it almost didn't happen. 20th Century Fox wasn't sure if a space film would sell, but then that little film Star Wars happened and they were like, alright everyone, we're going to space, go, 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 go! But what's also so cool about Alien, while it does have a space and sci-fi setting, it's really hybridizing it with another hugely popular film of the time, Halloween. So you've not only got the vastness of space, but the claustrophobic hallways of the ship. Nice little yin and yang there, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's talk about plot. The crew members of the commercial ship Nostromo are awakened from their stasis sleep when they receive a distress signal, and it's mandated by their company, Weyland-Yutani, that they have to check it out. Of course, when they start to poke around on the planetoid's surface, things start to get a little bit eerie and unsettling, only heightened by one of the crew members, Kane, just needing to poke his head into an alien egg, and some facehugger latches onto him. And basically from that point forward, the horror aspect comes in. As this facehugger impregnates Kane, a chestburster comes out, and now you've got an alien on board the ship slowly whittling down the crew. In terms of look and feel, holy shit, this movie is moody, mysterious, and yet at the same time so beautiful. Compositions are deep and rich and absolutely stunning, really harkening back to 2001: A Space Odyssey. The score is haunting, and the way that the plot progresses, you really get to see this slow building action all throughout. Also very cool is the way that Ridley Scott portrayed the crew. The way that they interact was just, no, this is just a job. You know, a day-to-day like anybody has in the future. And that was just another thing that made Alien so cool. A fresh take on space. And in doing that, the crew became that much more relatable, making the alien attacks that much more horrifying. Ridley Scott, you a clever son of a bitch, I appreciate that. Also what I appreciate is how many breadcrumbs have been set up in this film. There's so much information laid out about the alien before we ever get the adult, so at that point we don't have much else to learn about it. The pacing never needs to slow, and so we know exactly what we should be afraid of. And in terms of creature design, the xenomorphs are so cool. Apparently, the guy who conceptualized the xenomorph's design, Swiss surrealist H.R. Giger, was known to have night terrors, and he kept a sketch pad near his bed so he could draw out what those nightmares were. So the xenomorph is literally made of nightmares. So in case you couldn't tell, I'm a bit of a fan for Alien. Yes, it is more slowly paced than some horror films, but that patience and elegance has a real payoff. And now here we are with Aliens. Let's dive right into the plot with this one. Taking place 57 years after the events of Alien, Ripley awakens only to learn that the planet that her crew touched down on and initially encountered the alien with has now been terraformed. But wouldn't you know it, communication has suddenly run cold. So now Ripley has to accompany some colonial marines to figure out what's going on. And that's when Alien starts to become truly different. Because in Alien, you had these commercial crew members just trying to survive their encounter with the xenomorph. Aliens, they're trying to kill it, and if you go in with guns, how do you meet that? Well, with more aliens. The genre gets completely tilted on its head. Aliens is packed full of explosions, over-the-top 80s machismo, a handful of great quotable one-liners, and yet, despite all that running and gunning, that horror element remains ever present. Also, very much present and actually explored far more is the character of Ripley herself. In Alien, she was pretty straight-laced and hard-nosed. Yes, James Cameron definitely wanted to portray her as a tough-as-nails female, but we also see her in a nurturing role, as she's taking care of the only survivor, Newt, who looks an awful lot like Cosette from Les Mis. I will say though, her motivation for interacting with Newt is a bit upsetting in the director's cut. You see, in the director's cut, there's an additional scene where Ripley learns that 2 years prior to her coming out of stasis, her daughter died. Yes, this is a good moment for Sigourney Weaver to show emotional depth, but then it kind of makes Newt the rebound daughter. So it makes Ripley a slightly more selfish individual. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that scene does paint Ripley in a very different light. Also, speaking of light, let's talk about composition and general cinematography. Now, when talking about Alien, I had said that it was absolutely beautiful, and it is. With Aliens, there's a bit of flatness to everything. But here's the crazy part. The cinematographer for Alien, Derek Van Lent, has almost no additional credits to his name. I mean, truth be told, Ridley Scott being Ridley Scott probably shot a lot of it, but you'd think that this guy would get a little more work. On the flip side of things, the cinematographer for Aliens, Adrian Biddle, was actually the focus puller on Alien, and had worked with Ridley Scott on the famous 1984 Apple commercial. And that's what got James Cameron looking at him to then work on Aliens. And from there, that guy's got a ton of credits to his name. But here's another crazy little loop with Adrian Biddle. He actually started in underwater photography working on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and then years later was the cinematographer on The World Is Not Enough. Like, how crazy is that? Answer, pretty dang crazy. But what's also so crazy is comparing these two films and trying to decide which one is better. Sure, they both exist in the same universe, but that's like trying to decide between Inglourious Basterds and Schindler's List just because they both take place during World War II and there are Nazis. They're approaching their world in very different ways. Alien has this slow-building burn, whereas Aliens is more of a rough-and-tumble roller coaster. Alien focuses more on the mise-en-scène and the ensemble, whereas Aliens really develops Ripley as a protagonist driving much of the action. At the end of the day, it really just comes down to preference. Before recording this review, I definitely was leaning more towards the Aliens camp, but on rewatching both of them, I find myself favoring Alien. But honestly, with either film, you're getting an excellent cast and a rich, expansive world. And a great piece of sci-fi. So those are my thoughts on Alien and Aliens. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you have a clear favorite, let me know which one it is and why. And of course, if you'd like more from me, you can certainly check out my review of Prometheus, or if you're feeling like you want a bit of nostalgia from the 90s, why don't you check out my movie talks on Pokemon the First Movie? And if you're feeling especially adventurous, you can follow me on Twitter and like the Belated Media Facebook page. I post there on the daily. So comment, click, and keep loving movies, guys. As for me, I'm going to recall to you some of my nightmares, as illustrated through Microsoft Paint. Here we have me in a field, which seems to lead to absolute nothingness. This was a nightmare that came to me when I was pretty young, chained to a conveyor belt approaching a hammer-wielding Frankenstein-like monster. And finally, it wouldn't be a nightmare set if you didn't dream of a baby with spiders coming out of its neck.